And tune in. Bring your palms together. Thumbs at the chest. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale to begin tuning in. Going to jump right in. Okay, so you guys have your paper. And so you can write your name and your birthday. Tantric numerology is awesome. It really only uses your birthday. I used to do a lot with just traditional numerology from the age of 20, and it was awesome and fun. But when I found tantric numerology, it was like it hit my dark night as truth. It was just like, whoa, this is like real. There's some real truth in here, and I've just been studying it ever since. So I really love that idea of just using your birthday. The name is all confusing. If you do any kind of traditional numerology, they're like, this is a vowel if it's in this syllable, but it's not a vowel if it's in this, and if your doctor got it wrong, but not your mom, but if your mom got it wrong, it's like, no, just use the birthday. So the idea is that we all have 10 bodies. All of us, no matter what our birthday is, we all have 10 bodies. We all have a soul, auric body, all of that. Most of us are very aware of our physical body and don't pay much attention to the other 9. And the birthday gives us the clue as to which of these bodies we can pay more attention to in this lifetime, like maybe they're more likely to go out of balance, and which bodies are holding our gifts and our strengths, okay? So our soul number is the day that we're born. And so what we're going to do is add it together. So if it's, we're born on the 18th, 1 plus 8 is 9. However, if you have a 10 or an 11, it's not going to break down. So if you're 19, that's 10. If you're 29, that's 11. It's going to stay in 11. Does this make sense? Does everyone feel good about that? Okay? And so your soul is your innermost essence. It's the driving force behind your personality. So when we get into the bodies, you'll be paying attention to this. And the soul is, we're really like this when we're kids. And then as we get older, we lose this. And so this is a body that we want to pay attention to, okay? And as we reconnect with our soul, we start to get on our path again. So always kind of paying attention, bringing that body into balance. Our mastery number is the month that we're born. So everything is just straight, 1, 2, 3, 4, unless you're born in December, and then you're a 3, okay? We need some extra positive-minded people around here, so that's good. So,
she said, can you repeat that?
So the mastery number is the month that you're born. And so it is just straight, because if you're born in the 11th month, you're an 11. And if you're born in December, you're a 3. Okay, does that make sense? I wonder if there's another way to lift this. I feel like I'm hunching a little. Do you know how? Or just like, you didn't lift it up here. There we go. Creative solutions. This is a 3. Okay, so our mastery number is also called our homework. And if you've done your tantric numerology reading online for 3HO, they also call it your karma number. And so think about your karma and your homework. This is the body that we're here to really work on and learn lessons in. And so, just to give you an example, my mastery is my auric body. And it's just funny, because we're here. But I remember thinking at one point, I've been working on my aura. I feel like I have a really good aura. I'm not sure why this is my mastery, like why this is my homework. I feel like I have a good, strong aura. I feel confident. And then that night, like 55 people came to my class. And I was like tuning in. I couldn't catch my breath. And I was like, oh, well played, universe. Because I had mastered my aura to a certain point, and then the universe was going to give me that next round to practice on. So then I had to master having an strong auric body with, that many people, and hopefully we'll keep growing it, right? So your mastery is something that once you start to work on, you're gonna really start to master. Does that make sense? Okay. Our gift number. Our gift number is the last 2 of the year that we're born. So, if you're born in 82, you're a 10. If you're born in 83, you're an 11. If you're born in 84, you're a 3. So bringing those 2 numbers down. Everyone got that? So your gift is your gift. Okay? But there's a little thing with your gift. You have to know it's your gift. You have to own it, and then you have to hone it. So I will let you know tonight what your gift is, and I might tell you that your gift is your intuition, and that might be a surprise for you. And then that next time that you're deciding to make that decision, you're gonna be like, wait, she told me that my gift was my intuition. And then that moment, you're gonna own it, right? And then you'll start trusting it, and that's how you're gonna start honing it, okay? So it's really powerful to know our gift, because we're not always using it unless we're actually trying to, Yeah, go ahead. Yes. So like I say, if it's 82, it's a 10. If it's 87, it's a 6. Because 87 is 15, and then 1 plus 5 is 6. Okay? So it's just continually breaking it down to like that single digit 1 through 11. The knowledge number, again, in the traditional tantric numerology that you get online, it's called your destiny, your destiny number, but we call it your knowledge number with my teacher, Namhari Karkalsa. She's actually the one that does those 3HO readings, but she calls it the knowledge, so I call it the knowledge, and I like that. It's the knowledge that we're bringing in from past lives, that body that we've really mastered some lessons in, and so we have that, we can call upon that knowledge in this lifetime. However, what I found is this is the body that we have the least compassion in, because we're good at it already. So like for me, my knowledge is my positive mind, and so I really struggle when I see people just kind of being negative. I'm just like, ugh, just snap out of it. 3s are also like very good at problem solving and solutions, and so I tend to like come up with very fast, things. And I'm like, why is people taking so long for this? And I'm like, oh, because that's something I'm good at, So recognizing, I've told this to people before. Whenever you start to get frustrated with people, because of whatever, recognize that probably is your gift. Does that make sense? Like you might just be really good at that, and other people are still learning that lesson in this time. Like maybe you're super organized because you've mastered that fourth body of making lists and being structured, and somebody else has not quite learned that lesson. Does this make sense? So we get to be the light in these two areas to really show other people, what this balance looks like. Does that make sense? What was your question?
I missed which number you brought up.
The knowledge is your full year. So literally, whatever your gift is +1. So if your gift is a 3, your knowledge is a 4. Unless somebody is randomly born in 2000, and I'm looking at you.
No.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I know when you're born. Do you guys get what I mean? Because the 2000 would be like a 0 for a gift, and then a 2 for knowledge, because we'd be adding the full year. But for 19, it's a 1. Does that make sense? Because you don't have to understand. I'm just going to tell you. Just add 1 to your. So you have your knowledge number. And then we have our path. And our path, we say it's a challenge number until we get on our path. And then we really start expressing this in the balanced position. But a lot of us are not quite on our path. So we're like still, I would say most of us here are probably on our path, right? Yes, what was your question?
I have 1970.
So your gift is a 7, your knowledge is an 8.
Oh,
Yes.
I was using the soul. Sorry.
Yes. And so then your path is actually, if you want to do it really quickly, it's your soul, your mastery, and your knowledge added together. Because that's our day, our month, and our full year, right? But we've already broken it down, so it's a little easier to add. They call this the L form of addition. If you just do that little L for the soul, the mastery, and the knowledge.
And if you get 10, leave it at 10.
And if you get a 10, you leave it at 10. Right? And if you get an 11, you leave it as an 11. Yeah, so here we go. So the first body is the soul body. And, ones, and when I say ones, I mean people that are expressing that body, and especially like if you have a 1 in those 5 primary numbers, I might call you a 1. So like ones are here to show people what it looks like to listen to their soul. Okay? They're the leaders, they're the pioneers, they're inventive. When you're connected to your soul, you are the creative, you are the spontaneous flow of creativity and joy. Connecting to that soul body, getting those messages really from within. When you're out of balance in your soul body, you're experiencing a lot of fear because you're coming from your head. And so what we talk about with the soul body is this balance of the head and the heart. And I am going to talk very fast and just get as much information as you can. And even if you don't get it all down, whatever you get is exactly what you were supposed to. Right? Okay. So when we're connected to our soul, we're fearless. But if we're not, we're going through that mental loop. And, Nirvana calls it our mental conniptions. And we go in this circular logic. And so the idea is to kind of take those long, deep breaths and connect to the soul. I like to tell this, I'm not exactly sure what part of the brain it is, but we watched this documentary on the brain. It's a PBS documentary, and I highly recommend it to anyone that's really interested in this kind of stuff. But there was a woman who had gotten in an accident and had a traumatic brain injury, and wherever that point was in the brain, it had disconnected the logic and the emotion. And so she'd sit there trying to pick a potato out at the store. And she could look at the potatoes and she could see that some were bigger than others and some were different colors and some were organic and some were less expensive, but she couldn't make a decision. She was just all logic, making that because she couldn't attach a value to any of that. So when you find yourself doing that circular logic, you have to go back to your heart and just feel into what feels right. Because sometimes when you're coming from that, I always say, ones, because of that, they're only going to be like about 80% sure of any decision because they've already seen it from every position, right? And so they can explain and logic away anything. And so when you're coming from your soul, it's a lot of feeling. getting into that heart space. So when we're out of balance, we're not, ones are here to be independent. So if you're finding yourself dependent, you're probably disconnected from your soul body. Because, think about it. If you're connected to your soul body, everything's being provided for you. You're trusting, you're listening to your soul and it's guiding you. But if you're not trusting, you're in fear, you're more likely to stay in those kind of places that are going to keep you secure, not trusting. So we'll find ourselves being more dependent. I haven't quite mastered the microphone and the P sound. We'll come back to the soul a lot because it's so intermingled. Like, as if you're not connected to that soul body, all of these other bodies are more likely to be out of balance. But one thing I do want to mention is that the soul body is keeping track of this ultimate checklist. We're here to learn certain lessons. We all have different birthdays, okay? So we're here to learn certain lessons. So just a mastery of the radiant body, the 10, your lessons might be in patience, being graceful in ungraceful situations. So what we'll see is more opportunities to practice patience, more people in your life that are going to push your buttons, possibly for you to practice patience with, right? And so with this, so our soul body has that checklist, and it's telling us what to do. And it's saying, hey, go this way, go that way. And I joke that sometimes our human is like, ugh, but there's traffic. I don't want to go that way. And the soul's like, I don't know what to tell you. That's the way. The soul isn't really necessarily overly concerned with making your human comfortable. It just knows what you're supposed to be doing in this lifetime. And it really is about following your bliss. And so, you will, your soul, it will light you up, but your bliss, following your bliss won't hurt other people, right? If you're following your bliss, it's not going to hurt other people, but it may inconvenience their human. You might be getting the message from your soul to move, but your logic, your ego, that other part of you is saying, hey, but your mom is here. How could you ever leave your mom? You'd upset her so much if you were to do that. Well, that's not hurting your mom, it's inconveniencing her attachment to you. Does that make sense? So we have to really discern between that idea of I'm following my bliss, but I might be hurting somebody else. You'll never get a message from your soul that's going to tell you to hurt somebody else. Okay? Yeah.
To our soul number
relate to the soul body. It's so interesting. That was so confusing for me, especially because my soul number is a 1. So I was like, my soul body is my soul number. But it's just that idea of if you got rid of that soul number and just said inner essence, and then the soul body is that body that's connected to the soul. So your soul number might be a 4, which means your natural nature is to be compassionate and loving and serviceful, right? But the person who's 1 is a soul, nature is to be a leader. It's really hard for ones to be kind of followers. As a matter of fact, you'll know that you're out of balance in your 1 if you have trouble learning from others because you just want to be the leader. And so the idea is that ones need to learn how to submit, and surrender. And then once they are the student, then they'll be the really good teacher. I had my own lesson with that because I had a teacher in St. Louis. I prefer Guru Jagat, but I have a teacher in St. Louis, and I was like, okay, I'm going to practice my 1. I'm going to go and buy a 5-card package, and I'm going to submit, and I did it, and I went to the classes, and it was great because I needed that humility of learning, right? So that checklist is really important. So that soul is giving us that checklist, and what will happen is if we're not listening to the soul, and I wanted to go ahead and tell you this, we're going to go into the other bodies, but the soul is a little important. The soul body is connected to the subtle body, and the soul body is a masculine number, and the subtle body, which is the 9th body, is a feminine number. Okay, and these two are closely connected in that after we die, all the other bodies fall away, and the soul gets encapsulated within the subtle body, and those bodies go on to the next lifetime.
And so the soul has the checklist of what we're working on, and it knows, like what the next thing is. And I always say the subtle body is keeping track of how gracefully we handle that check mark. So the joke is, if you're in this lifetime on the checklist is to go through a divorce, you don't get the check if you burn their clothes. You got to go through it amicably, and then you get the check mark, right? And then we understand the spiral, how that works, right? So we go through the experience, we handle it gracefully, we get our check mark in pencil, and then we go through it again, and then we got, because they want to make sure it wasn't a fluke, that like you knew consciously what you were doing. So then you go through it again, and then you get your check mark in pen. Okay, and then you got to go through it a third time just to really make sure. And then you get a permanent marker, done, stored, lesson learned, like you're good, you don't have to repeat it. So some of us are at varying degrees with all of these lessons, right? You guys seen that spiral come around where you're like, oh, I get this one, I've done this before. It gets easier each time because we're aware of it. So the soul body will be like, hey, go this way. The subtle body will be giving us those really subtle hints, like, hey, this isn't the way, you turn around. And what I say happens if we're not listening to those messages, we're going to get ejected from the vehicle. And this is going to look a little more violent than if we had just listened to those messages and easily turned our vehicle around and went the other direction. Have you guys ever been in a relationship and you're just like, oh man, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be with this person, but you're just really not sure. It just hasn't been totally clear, and then all of a sudden you guys get in a fight. And then somebody says something, and all of a sudden you're broken up. It's like, your thought is like, man, if I just hadn't have said that, we wouldn't have broken up. Or if I hadn't have written that, we wouldn't have broken up. It's like, no, your soul made you say that. Your soul made you write that. Your soul can get blurry sometimes to force you to get on the right path. If you don't listen enough, you're going to get ejected from that vehicle because the soul knows which way you're heading. Does that make sense? Have you guys ever felt ejected when you weren't listening and you look back and you're like, I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing that, and then you kind of almost feel that relief because it's like it had to happen for you because you didn't do it. So we want to kind of avoid that situation. We want life to be ease and grace. We don't want to get ejected. So gracefully. Okay, so let's go to the negative mind. The mental bodies are really awesome. They're my favorite thing to teach about. So we have our negative mind, our positive mind, and our neutral mind. And we know as Kundalini yogis that all our thoughts start in the negative mind, go to the positive, and end up in the neutral. And if our mental bodies are balanced, this can take a minimum of 9 seconds. Which means not before 9 seconds, right? Which means most of us, when we respond, are mostly coming from our negative or positive minds because we're not taking 9 seconds to respond. So this is a good, we have seen that meme, practice the pause. That's a really good meme for the neutral mind. So the negative mind is, it's protecting us. We call the negative mind the protective mind. I don't love the term negative mind. If we really think about it, it's just trying to protect us, then it's easier. We want to love that protective part, and we needed that part. Evolutionarily, we needed, when we were hunters and gatherers to have that part be like, hey, that's dangerous, don't do that, to keep us safe, to keep us alive. And then we had our positive mind come in and be like, okay, it looks safe, but we really need to eat, right? So we then have that positive mind to kind of, push us along. And then neutral is where we balance it. A really good example of how that works, I had a friend who had been driving down the road, and he hit a deer on the road. It had been raining, it was dark at night, and he hit a deer. And what he said was that he was never going to drive down that road again. That's a very negative mind, okay? The negative mind takes an experience and then assumes that that experience is going to be that way every other time. It's very attached to that expectation of what it was expecting, and it's based on our previous experiences. So anytime you come into a situation like the example of a birthday party, like if I say the word party to you, all of us have an image, of our ideal party or parties that we've been to in the past. So if you go to a party and it doesn't have music or food or whatever it was that you were expecting, that negative mind instantly is going to come up and be like, this isn't a party, or this is a bad party. And then our positive mind is going to be like, but our friends are here, but there's cake, and it's going to try to see the best in the situation, right? And I think just in general, we really like to do that because we really just want to feel good about what we've done. We don't want to leave with that sour taste in our mouth. And so, it's fine. We want to just be like, oh yeah, that was a good party. But the idea is that neutral is negative and positive are how our human is feeling about the party. It's saying that the party is good or bad. But neutral is our soul looking down at us at the party, saying, okay, why are we at this party? Who are we supposed to be talking to? What are we supposed to be learning? It doesn't care if the party's good or bad. It just knows you're supposed to be at the party and that there's something that you can be learning. So I'm going to go back to that deer story, but an example of this is like I was at a restaurant, and I am a mom of 3 boys, twins that are 6, and they have a little brother that'll be 4 at the end of the month. So anytime I get some alone time is really nice, and so I was at this restaurant eating lunch by myself, which I was excited about, and this guy starts talking to me, and I'm like, oh my god, he's ruining my lunch. I was so excited and attached and expecting to eat lunch on my own, and now this guy is ruining my experience. So I very quickly recognized I'm in my negative mind, right? And I'm like, oh, don't be negative, okay, how can you get to positive? And I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. It's nice to have human adult conversation, I'm just like trying to think that, and then I joke I went to super positive. I was like, maybe he's gonna ask me on a date, let's like go in there. I got a positive mind, guys. I left the meal just like, okay, cool, that was nice. I never got to neutral I didn't get to neutral until 5 days later. I was talking to my friend, and my joke is that she kind of talks a lot, and so I just, I hold space and listen, but all of a sudden she starts talking about something that this guy had mentioned at the lunch, and I was like, oh, that's why he was talking to me. So I was able to understand like what was going on in the situation. So a lot of times we can get to neutral in hindsight, like we can understand the why and the lesson of this experience. But I want to challenge people to get to neutral in the moment. We can always get to neutral in hindsight. Can we get to neutral in that 9 seconds? What I reflected on was like I could have gotten to neutral at the restaurant. I could have been like, instead of just being, oh, this is nice, I could have been like, I wonder why this guy's talking to me. I'm excited to find out, what the relevance of this conversation is. I'm excited to see how this is going to play out. Does that make sense? Like just that kind of openness and curiosity. We could think about these bodies as related to the chakras. So when we think about the neutral mind, it's like being very open and being going with the flow and accepting whatever's happening. Does that make sense? And so the negative mind, when it's very strong, it's overprotective. It's always seeing the negative, all the obstacles, And so what we see is with a lot of 2s, this can prevent them from getting started on projects because all they're seeing is the obstacles, right? And then what we see with the positive mind is that they might jump into projects without thinking about all of the obstacles. And then they start and they're like, ooh, wait, this is a little more difficult than I realized it would be, and they don't finish. And so what we see with the neutral mind is the neutral mind's the builder, And so we think of a builder, we think of like, okay, they've gone through all the obstacles that could possibly come up, right? And then they go use their positive mind to come up with solutions to all those problems. And then the neutral mind becomes that builder where they make the list, they check the list, and then they create something really great. So what we'll see is like we're not finishing projects, we're more than likely out of balance in these areas. So I want to just briefly more touch on this idea of expectation as related to the negative, positive, and neutral mind, and just like our past experiences, because like I said, I'm a very positive-minded person, and my kid's dad is a very negative-minded person. And this is good, because I've understood that we're here to learn from each other, right? And you guys understand this idea of soul contracts? I like to think of him, and I personally was like, okay, I really need to learn about the negative mind from you. He's like, I need to learn about the positive mind from you. I'm like, we're not going to like this lessons, because we're totally opposite, right? And so we're going to want to run from each other. How can we, maybe we could be mom and kid. Like, well, kids stop talking to their parents all the time, right? So like maybe we can, how about if we have kids together? Then we'll never be able to get away from each other, and then we'll just always have to be learning this lesson. So I'm just like in love with this idea that I get to learn how to have this protective mind for a long time, and that I get to teach him how to have a positive mind. So look at your relationships. Like, get the numbers of the people in your relationships and start looking at why you brought them into your life and what you get to learn from them, right? And then also you'll have more compassion for them for what's going on with their numbers, Like, if you know that, like I had a situation with, like, my teacher, and she was saying, that there was this woman, and I was like, oh, maybe she's a 2, maybe she has a longing to belong, because that's what a weak negative mind has, is a longing to belong, that urge to merge. And it was just like a way of looking at her and having compassion, this is her natural way of being, so that we can understand that. So yeah, so when we have a weak negative mind, we're not protecting ourselves, right? And like we're more in our positive mind, we're not seeing the dangers of the situation. So you might have a 2 and it could be too strong, or it could be too weak. You're like, wait, that doesn't sound like me. I don't sound like a negative person. Yeah, you might be on the other extreme and not protecting yourself at all. And then you'd be more in that positive mind. 2s are very devotional as well. Like, the one, I said if you're dependent, then you're out of balance. If you're a 2 and you're codependent, you're out of balance. Because that 2s just want that merger, so they'll lose themselves in someone else. Does that make sense? That devotional kind of negative mind. So we were going to a baseball game, and I'm like so excited about this baseball game. And my kid's dad's like, oh my gosh, don't you remember last year? Like, it was so awful. I'm like, what are you talking about? It was so amazing. We had so much fun. He's like, don't you remember the parking? I'm like, oh, yeah. Because the positive mind doesn't remember the bad, and the negative mind only does. So he would be more likely to not go back to the baseball game because he remembered how bad the parking situation was, or I would be more likely to go but repeat the same mistake. So I like joke that 3s, they like to repeat their mistakes, like just to make sure. I honestly do think this, like 3s, they have to, like, they'll be told, oh, if you wash your clothes together, it's gonna do this, and they'll need to do it themselves just to make sure. Like, but 2s will like, okay, if you do this, and they'll live in fear. They'll be like, I can't ever do this. They'll take it on from other people and never go and learn it for themselves. Where 3s have to learn it for themselves over and over to really believe it. Does that sound familiar? Okay. So the guy who was driving down the road, obviously, when he's like, I'm never going to drive down that road again, that's his negative mind, right? Right? So what would the positive mind say? The positive mind kind of poo-poos the negative mind. It's like, psh, what are you talking about? So it's like, what are you talking about? Of course you can ride down that road again. What are the chances that I'd hit a deer again? It talks like that. It's like, how likely would that be to happen? Whereas the negative mind's like, I could never drive down that road again. because we're talking, now we're getting into like the boundaries, because the negative mind and the positive mind, this all relates to boundaries. So the negative mind's going to protect you. If something happens, it's going to be like, hey, I got you. I will never let that happen to you again. I will never let that person hurt you. Block up, grudge mode. That's the negative mind. It blocks boundaries, puts separation. Whereas the positive mind is like, can see the potential in people. It can see the positive and will tend to over forgive. Does this make sense? So neutral is where you can have that clear kind of balance, like where you're not going to just keep letting the same thing happen over and over to you. We want to see the best in people. We want to hold the vision for their best self. And also, we get to protect ourselves. So that we just don't want our first inclination to be the boundaries. Right? But boundaries are okay. So the guy's driving down the road and he's like, what? Like the likelihood. So what I think neutral is in this situation is like that you don't drive down the road at night or in the rain. But you can still drive down the road. You don't completely block off that experience just because you're afraid that might happen again. So it's that balance of it. You protect yourself. You don't drive down the road at night. You don't drive down the road in the rain because you don't want to hit the deer, but you're not going to just negative mind yourself from that road completely. And that's neutral to me. It's one way of neutral. Another neutral is, again, just being that observer, constantly being the observer. I'm honest, like I'm a yogi because I need the technology. I witness myself in my negative mind all the time. I'm like, my human is so not liking this situation right now, and I'm like getting all feisty about it, and my neutral mind's like laughing at my human, like getting all feisty. I'm like, okay, here we are. So just observe yourself where you're at. Just notice when you're in your negative, notice when you're in your positive, and that's how you're going to help shift yourself to neutral. But don't judge yourself for where you're at. Just observe it, and then you'll start moving through it way more easily. So the positive mind's like joy, happiness, it sees the best in people, just as like, it's just like the cook. Think of the positive mind as like all that creativity going into the food and all that love going into the food. Threes like to plan things, so they're seeing those, like far off, so they're the big planners. Blue sky, those are positive mind people, that when you go blue sky. I always like to think of the negative mind as like an abyss that you can get stuck in, okay? And then the positive mind like this hook that grabs you and flings you up into the air of all the possibilities. Because the positive mind, we're talking all the possibilities, this is where the brainstorming and all of that creativity comes from. 3 is a very creative number. So some people have bigger hooks than other people, right? Some people get stuck in that abyss because they have a smaller hook. They can't. So we can use our hooks to help other people out. We can use our ability to like uplift other people. So then that positive mind, blue sky, that's a non-reality, that's not real. So then when neutral is when we hit the ground. So neutral-minded people are very practical, pragmatic. They're just observing everything, so they can really see the truth. And I would say even like maybe sometimes like kind of stoic, they're less affected, Like the negative, positive, we're all in our emotions, and the neutral is just chill, calm. They're just less affected, more neutral. So we're going to see that out of balance when, we're very rigid. If you have a 4 in your mastery or your soul, my joke is that you're going to keep getting your food wrong at the restaurant until you're just okay with it. Because everything's not going to be the way you expect. You got to be neutral. So How do you guys feel about the mental bodies? Like just this, kind of like maybe a different way of looking at them and just kind of seeing yourself working through them with the expectations. And the last thing is like, yeah, again, that boundaries, just really protecting yourself, using that negative mind to protect yourself, but not overprotect yourself, noticing when you're blocking. The fifth body is the physical body. And I want to say something else about the neutral mind. When you're balanced in your neutral mind, again, think about the heart chakra, you're very humble and serviceful and loving. If you have a challenge in your 4, you're also going to struggle with self-love because you can't give love to others if you don't have it for yourself. And so this is like a really big thing with the 4. In the soul or the mastery. It's just really learning these kinds of not judging yourself. 3s in general tend to feel more guilt, and so they'll hold on to like that idea of pleasing people. They're that positive minded person. They want to say yes. They want the win-win, and so they'll feel guilty if they can't. Yeah, very serviceful. 4s, especially as a path, need an outlet to serve. Because if they don't, what they do is they just go around helping everybody. Like, they call it heart syndrome, helper syndrome. All your energy's leaving your heart chakra. You're not going up to these higher centers, you're just giving all your stuff away. So here's the thing we're going to do. We're going to work on boundaries in that one. On a spiritual level, maybe we don't help people unless they ask us. And this is very, on a soul level, again, we're understanding that people have come here to learn certain things, right? So we've asked for these certain lessons to learn certain things. And if we help someone and they haven't asked for it, they're not learning what they're supposed to be learning in that situation. So what I tell people is like, my kids are like, I'm thirsty. I'm like, that sounds like a problem. What's the solution? Because there's never going to be a situation with my kids that I'm just going to go get them a cup of water if they say they're thirsty. Because they're just complaining, right? And I don't want to teach them to go around in the world and just say, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, and expect everyone to give them what they need. What they need to do, and I'm starting them at a very young age, is say, I'm thirsty, what do I need? Oh, I need water. How do I get it? I can get it myself or I can ask for it. And so I feel like if we start understanding, like, waiting for people to ask us for help is teaching them to ask for help. And this is like something beautiful because we need to understand, like, from our perspective, that at the moment that we ask the universe for help, it's going to come. But we have to ask it for help, right? We can't just, like, expect. We have to ask. So again, getting into those expectations. Have some unspoken expectations of people, that things that you expect from them that you haven't quite asked them for? Because they don't have to give it to you if you haven't asked. And the moment that you get annoyed that they haven't, this is the golden rule. It's like, treat others the way you want to be treated, but don't expect them to treat you the same way. Just treat people the way you want to be treated, but have no expectation on their behavior. Just love. So that idea of like not helping them, and then they get to, because if we help them, then they have to repeat that lesson later in this lifetime, or maybe in the next lifetime. Does that make sense? So your human really is uncomfortable because 4 represents compassion. It's the heart. So our heart is like, sees them struggling, we just want to help, right? But we got to get out of that human emotion and get into that observer role of this bigger spiritual picture, okay? And we also get to help people. If your soul is telling you to help, help. I'm not telling you that you cannot help people unless they ask. However, this is a boundary thing. It's just a way to have better boundaries. So the physical body, We're very familiar with our physical body. All our emotions are felt through the physical body, and all of the other bodies are expressed through this physical body. So we need to keep it in good working order. It's our vehicle, And so the joke is like, if we're eating poorly, how are you going to know if that's indigestion or intuition? So we need to keep our physical body in working order. 5 represents self-care. So if you're out of balance in your physical body, if you have 5s, you're maybe possibly struggling more with self-care and giving as much as you're receiving, or opposite, receiving as much as you're giving. We're also going to see people that are like possibly, this is in the out of balance position, overly concerned with the way they look, with their physical body, with their external. If you think of 5 as the human, as opposed to the soul, this is like, do I have the right car? Do I have the right house? Am I keeping up with the Joneses? Does my body look good? Does my hair look good? I ask how I look sometimes, it's okay. It's that bigger, deeper, like, I can't leave the house because my shoes don't match my shirt or something. My mom won't leave the house without earrings on, without makeup. If she was wearing navy blue and black pants once to go through the drive-thru and she had to change. I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? She's like, what if I were to get in an accident? Did I tell you my mom's a 20, negative mind? So guess what? The 0 after a number means you're extra that. So I'm talking to you, gift of the 70. You better be elevating everybody. Yeah, so my mom's like extra negative minded, and she's like, oh, what if I get in an accident? She's just like, oh my God, stop. So just see when you're out of balance. Like, it's really funny too, because also it could be people that just don't take care of their physical body. So we'll see like people that are like more overweight, or have addictions, because again, 5 is the human. So 5s are, the idea is that we're here to have every human experience, right? We're not supposed to deprive ourselves of anything. I really love Guru Joget was talking once. She's like, yeah, my human wants to go to a Beyonce concert. It's like, we're here to have all these experiences, It's just sometimes with addiction, we get overly attached to certain human experiences, okay? So it's this idea of, enjoying yourself and having them, but moderation. And then again, I like to say this too, even your moderation in moderation. And I heard this from a teacher, this isn't my own thing, but even your moderation in moderation. And so that means you get that. I had this woman who came to my class, and she was like, I just ate a whole pan of cacao brownies last night. I'm still feeling kind of, and I was like, I totally was judging her. I was like, oh my gosh, that's sacred. You're not using it sacredly, And I was able to get to neutral because I was judging, I was able to get to neutral and be like, you know what? She had to have that experience because she facilitates cacao ceremonies. So she had to have the experience of what it's like to have too much cacao, right? Right? We have these experiences, so then we know, we don't have to go repeat it, right? She learned her lesson. She doesn't need to go have a cacao pan every night of brownies. Does that make sense? So stop judging yourself for your experiences. Just learn from them. Stop feeling guilty. It's like the best advice. Guilt really douses your fire at the navel. You have this fire in your navel, and it's this. The navel is the seat of everything. When we talk about the Kundalini rising, it's rising from the root, but it's the navel that's the lighter. And if we don't have a lighter, we can't raise it. It's that pressure cooker, and that raises it. So just that guilt is just gotta go. So so we'll see just people that also have a lot of physical ailments. I have this woman, and she posts on Facebook, she's going through all these autoimmune things, she's got all these allergies, she's got all this stuff, and I'm just like, I swear to God, this woman has got to be a 5 in her mastery of her soul, because again, those two positions are the places where we're going to pay more attention to the body, right? She's born May 5th. paying attention, and so this can be mental or emotional, or this could be physical, but it also could be mental, so like again, people that have depression or any kind of mental kind of anorexia or that kind of thing. It's again learning all of these lessons through the physical body. And what we see, especially like with addiction, we'll see like a person, 5 is the number of the teacher. So if you're like a 5 path, that's a teacher. But why? Because you've had all these experiences in your human body that then you get to go and share with others. So like if you have that addiction, then the teacher format is that you become a sponsor, right? So it's not necessarily like a teacher like right here in front of the group, but just that you're teaching. Does this make sense? Yes, so just learning more about our physical body. Okay? The 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, we're getting into the energetic bodies now. Okay? And all of these bodies are really all kind of part of the auric body, and I'll just explain and then we'll go into each of them individually. And also, because we started late, does anyone mind if we go a little over? Does anyone absolutely have to get out of here at 10? I love you all. You're my kind of people. Okay. Oh wait, I should ask the person that's here, keeping us. Are you okay if we go? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the arc line is considered the nucleus of the aura, okay? And our arc line is like our halo. And, they talk about it can be pencil thin and dull and have cracks in it, or it can be silver and lustrous and thick. And so our arc line represents our intuition. And so this is really great. It's our truth barometer, our barometer of truth. So if somebody says something to us, it'll hit our arc line as truth or not. Have you guys ever had the experience, I say, oh, that hit me as truth. That resonated with me. It hit my arc line, and my arc line perceived that as truth. But we also have the same experience when we hear a lie. Have you ever heard, I cringe, it hits me, and I'm like, because it didn't feel, it hit me wrong. It didn't hit right. Didn't hit me as truth. So our arc line helps us really gauge that, especially if it's very well tuned. And basically, so then it's our intuition. It's our intuition that's telling us if that's a lie or not. So the more heightened the intuition that we have, the better. Our arc line is processing the thoughts of others. So we have our aura, and we know our aura can be anywhere between 3 and 9 feet from our body. And so that's really processing the energy of the people in our physical space, right? And the arc line is people's thoughts from far away. So we gotta have both of these strong. So if we are working on our arc line, we're ultimately working on our aura. If we're working on our aura, we're ultimately working on our arc line. So we can do this. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this out there. If you're really looking for a great arc line meditation, Gyan Chakra Kriya. You guys know what I'm talking about? Satanam, Satanam, Waheguru, Waheguru. Ooh, it'll change your life. I was, the arc line, it's the third eye. Satnam is the mantra that I think of for the arc line. It's like this receiving this truth, and this wisdom. And so I was sharing this. I like to share posts sometimes that I feel like are a little vulnerable for me to share on Facebook. And normally after I share a post, I can feel people reading it. I'll be like, oh, that person read it and they liked it. Oh, that person read it and they didn't like it. And it would have nothing to do with whether or not anyone had actually liked or loved it on Facebook. It was just me kind of going through these names that were coming to my head. And so I started doing Gyan Chakra Kriya. I was on day 30, around there, and I made this post, and I'm going and doing my dishes, and I am trying to think of somebody's name on my friends list, and not one person's name is coming through. Not even my best. I can't even remember my best friend's name. I'm trying to remember. She's blonde hair. What's her name? And I am like just kind of closing my eyes, and I'm like tilting my head, and like it feels like it's on the tip of my tongue. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my arc line's working for me. And I understood in that moment, like all of those thoughts of people, whatever, were hitting and bouncing off because my arc line was protecting me. And so I remember setting down my scrubby thing and like walking into the living room like, this is what it feels like to not care what people think. I feel so bold. And it was just this really idea of like really living that truth and not caring what other people think. Because arc line represents like societal awareness. You know, and so think about these like layers, you know, like this is what my parents think, this is what my family thinks, this is what society thinks, and all of those things weigh on us. And that becomes like the way that we act in the world. And so it's like freeing ourselves from all of those things, like, you know, the arc line when it's out of balance, you know, like people that have an out of balance of self-doubt, you know, and so self-doubt strips 3 feet from the aura. So think, if you have 3 feet, that's kind of at that level where the arc line is. So I always say you gotta take your 3 feet back. You gotta stop caring about whatever people think, and then you can be in your own. The arc line, they say, is the whisper of the soul. Your intuition is the whisper of the soul. And so you gotta get that chatter of what everybody else wants from you, what everyone else thinks you should do, and get back to that whisper. You know, the arc line also represents like our integrity, like the power of our word, the power of our ability to keep our word. So every time we tell a little white lie, we're like lowering our vibration a little. So, you know, I always say like the 107.7 is the highest radio station back where I'm from in St. Louis. And so I always say like 107.7, that's the station of truth, right? And every time we tell a little white lie, or every time we kind of do things with lower vibration, we're like 107.6, 107.5. And the idea is we can still hear the message, it's just a little staticky, right? But it's there, we can still hear it. But then what happens if we keep lowering it? Then all of a sudden all we hear is static. And then and all of a sudden we're on a new station, and that station's coming in loud and clear. We think that's the truth. But that's a whole another, like, that's the society's truth, right? So we gotta raise our vibration to where we can really hear that message coming from that universal truth, right? So the power of your word also represents like the power of your word, like the power of you to like manifest and project, you know, so that using the words that enable you. So I'm not going to be able to say much about this because of time, but I do want to recommend this book called Word Up by Danny Katz. And it used to be Quantum Languaging, or the book used to be called The New P Handbook, which is like the new paradigm. And it's about quantum languaging. But I just highly recommend. It's like $14, and it'll really give you the tools to speak in a way that are going to support your projection.
Who was the author?
Danny Katz. It's DANI KATZ. Danny Katz. So our aura, okay, I want to tell you one more thing, because this is like a fun story. I was in LA at a Jobji course, and it was that was my trip, my very first time going to Rama in Venice, and just taking like so many classes with Guru Jagat and Guru Singh, and like I was just taking like 3 classes a day, and then I had my Jobji workshop, which was all weekend, and I was just feeling really connected. And I was in this Persian cookie store, And I remember very clearly, like, I was not wanting to buy a cookie. Like, I walked in and pretty much immediately thought they all looked gross. So I was trying to find the least gross cookie because I felt bad because these guys were kind of waiting on me, and I just, I didn't want to like leave, like that's that feeling bad, going against my patterns. And all of a sudden I got this message really loud and clear: leave the store, like leave. And I feel like had I not been like so in that clarity and that message so clear, that I might have been like, okay, but it's impolite to just leave. I gotta say thank you and bye and explain myself and do the walkout and be embarrassed, But it was just, the message was so clear. I didn't care about the society rules, because the society like says that you should do that, right? So I didn't care about those things. I just went outside, and all of a sudden there's a motorcycle coming towards me, and the guy stops. And he lifts up his visor and he puts a $100 bill in my hand. Says, "Blessings from Guru Ram Das," and drove off. Yeah. And I had met this guy earlier in the week, and he knew I was leaving that day, and he was just hoping to see me along that strip, And so the idea is like, if I had not have left, nothing bad would have happened, right? But because I left, because I honored that Sat Nam, and I'm going to explain that truth, that message that came in and stepped outside, that I was ready for those blessings. So we can think of our intuition as just like guiding us towards more prosperity, more blessings, but it's like, if you don't listen to your intuition, something bad's gonna happen. It's like, no, you just might have to eat a nasty cookie. So just like, tuning in and listening and not judging. So I have a kind of Sat Nam, truth, Sat Nam, the name. And like, I was talking to Guru Meher, because Nam, like Namo, and Namaste, and Name is like to bow, right? So Sat Nam is like to bow to the truth. So when that message comes in, that you listen to it, that you surrender to it, that you bow to it, that's listening to your intuition. That when you open the fridge, and you're like, I should eat this, but then listen to your intuition. It'll give you healthy choices. And sometimes it'll give you a whole pan of cacao brownies. So the aura is the electromagnetic field around us. And Guru Jagat calls it like our orbit, our aura. And it's so funny because I like to think of it as our atmosphere. Think of the Earth's atmosphere. It's protecting us, right? So like if a meteor enters the Earth's atmosphere, it's gonna burn up before it hits. And so when we have a weak aura, all that stuff can hit us, right? So here's how you'll know when your aura's when your aura's weak. Okay? It's like how many of you guys have lived with somebody else? Okay, so this is really good practice for your aura. Always. Because we're always at different energy levels, and your aura can literally change at any moment. It's because it's based on your emotions in that moment. And so you can have a really strong aura, and then, something can happen. So the idea is that we don't want just a strong aura, we want a well-maintained aura. We want to put the energy into the aura every day so that it doesn't just shrink so easily. So we're not so affected, we're not so fluctuating. So it's like, you're in the morning, you're feeling really good, and your partner, your friend, or your roommate, or whatever comes downstairs, and they're kind of grumpy, and they're like, and you're just like, oh, because your aura is big, it's like, oh, they're kind of grumpy, they're kind of, this, right? You're aware of it, but you're not grumpy, right? You're good, So the next morning, maybe you didn't drink enough water, maybe you didn't get enough sleep, maybe you didn't have enough time to recharge your aura. And so now your aura is weaker. And they come down the stairs all grumpy. And you're like, I always gotta wake up in a bad mood. Why can't you ever just say good morning? Why do you always gotta Guess what? Their energy hit you, and now you have become that energy, and now you're like grumpy too. And I don't think we recognize as much like when the energy hits us and we are affected. When we're complaining, That's because whatever you're complaining about, that energy hit you, and you're that energy now that you're complaining about. You're spreading it in the world. There was this guy, I accidentally cut him off. I cut him off. I did. And he got into the carpool lane and was like double birding me, and like, and I was like, oh man, don't look. And I looked, and I felt this like, in the pit of my stomach, and I was like, oh, that's the pain that he's in, because hurt people. They bleed all over you, the wounded. So he's bleeding on me, and I felt it, and I was like, oh, this isn't mine. And I was like, I just pray that he can heal this pain, like send it back. But I was thinking in that moment, I was like, observer, I'm like, wow, that was your aura. Your aura was strong right in that moment, because that could have totally affected you. This idea of the empath is a little confusing, because we have empowered empaths and we have not empowered empaths. So if you're walking around saying, oh, I can feel everything that's going on around me, I can feel when people are in pain, it's like, your aura is probably weak. You're probably a little affected. We want to, the idea is that we can be aware of what people are feeling and not also take it on. Does that make sense? There's no reason why you have to feel pain to know that a person is in pain. We have this awareness, we can, and we have a subtle body. We can pick up on the subtle cues, right? So let's go ahead and skip to the subtle body. The subtle body is super affected. When you have a 9 in a challenge position, you're feeling it all. Because the subtle body, your ability to tap into that subtle energy. And so this is where we're really careful about like making sure we have a strong aura. Because again, the subtle body is a part of the aura. It's at the feet. It's where the Akashic record is stored. Remember, that makes sense though, because the subtle body relates to our past lives. So again, all those check marks of how gracefully we've handled everything and all those lessons that we learn are stored in the subtle body. We can call on that subtle body, we can call on our past lives to inform our current, right? And so the idea is that we don't want to be affected. We want to be aware of what other people are feeling so that we can elevate them. Like in the morning, oh, they're tired, they're this, they're that. So we can give them water, offer them a coffee. The strong aura, elevate yourself in order to elevate others. You can't elevate somebody if you're there with them. But if their energy, you might be able to lift them out of that. Elevate yourself to elevate others. We'll notice our aura is weaker. When we're withdrawn, when we're isolated, because we need to recharge our aura because we're affected. So let me rephrase that. It's okay to take time to yourself to recharge your aura, and also living that life of the renunciate is out of balance. We're not meant to be yogis in caves, right? We're here, the householders. We're here to have these tools. We're not here, we don't want to develop our sensitivity so much that we can't exist in the world. So that's what the strong aura does for us.
What's good practice for the aura?
Anything with the arms. Because anytime you're like doing anything, ego eradicator is really great. Kirtan Kriya is really great. Anytime you're getting in flowing water or just drinking water. They say if you want to change your aura, drink water or go to the bathroom. Because it's changing your water consistency. Or the water, what am I saying? Not consistency, like concentration. So like water. And so then the aura represents the lymph system and that ability to like clear out those things. Flowing water. So the subtle body, so then people with a really strong subtle body pick up things very easily. Because what they're doing is they're observing and they're watching. And so they're picking up on I call it imprinting. They can watch somebody do something and it imprints on them, and then they know what to do. And so if you don't have as strong of a subtle body, you're gonna ask. Like I joke, like, okay, if you're like doing training and that person puts the paper there, like a strong subtle body, be like, oh, that's where the paper goes. But a person with a weaker subtle body be like, oh, where does the paper go? It's like people with a really strong subtle body, they don't need to be told. They just are picking it up and they're learning things. And when it's out of balance, this is like imitation. Does this make sense? Versus just learning and imprinting. So you see, like 7s can be, or 9s can sometimes be like unoriginal. And this is a thing for the 1 too, because 1s are supposed to be original and independent and like totally, unique and pioneers. And so if they're not pioneers, they're imitative. They're not listening to their own soul, right? Nines also struggle with completion because the subtle body is all about refinement and sophistication. And what happens is they can get into all the subtle details of all their plans and get kind of stuck and hung up on the refining of the plan. They refine it. It's never good enough. And this can cause them to be procrastinators. And on the other end, because they pick up things so quickly, they can possibly not go very far, like in anything. Because everything comes so easily to them that once it starts to get a little hard, they move on to the next thing. So what 9s are here to do is work towards mastery. Pick one thing and go all the way with it. They're not meant to have their hands in so many. They're meant to be masters. I really love this because every body, if you go onto the 3HO website, has like daily things that you can do. And it's like do this kriya, do this meditation, and I love the subtle bodies, like any meditation for 1,000 days, because it's like going all the way with it. It's like don't have the experience of it, master it, go all the way with it, become a master. So yeah, the subtle body is like all about grace, so think about that refinement and the sophistication. And so what we'll also see is like people that have a very strong subtle body like love like gourmet foods and like art museums and like those kinds of sophisticated things, and so like and then you have the 1 here. Just kidding. I like all my food deconstructed like I'm a kid. No gourmet food, please. No, I'm just kidding. I like all of it. So just like working on the subtle body, all the subtleties. Like that gourmet is like that palate. There's so much subtlety to it, when you have the weak subtle body when you walk into an art museum and are like, I could do that. It's like you're missing the nuance of the strokes and the colors and the palette, all of that. So paying attention. So the radiant body. I like all of these bodies when we get in tarot are super closely connected, but you asked me something for the aura, and I need to mention this. It's sound. Like chanting mantra is for the aura.
Tuning forth.
Any kind of sound, like it's gonna like elevate you. Like think about when you chant a mantra, it's very elevating, Like when I talk to people, it's like, the gong is gonna shake you up, right? And like the movement is gonna shake you up. But when we chant, Like our tongue is connected to our navel. And we become this like living vibration, and we actually could shake ourselves up like so much better than this external. So singing is that kind of elevating, that mantra is that elevating force. And nature. That's the last one. I said flowing water, but I wasn't clear about nature. It's like they said, like a path of a 7 could be like the forest park, like the ranger in the forest, you know. Park ranger in the forest. There we go. Got it. So, and then, here's another one. When you're the 7 and you're out of balance, and this is in balance too, but 7s love to know why, because 7s can be very hyper analytical. And I say hyper as like the negative side, but like the 7 is like the scientist. They want to know why. And in that, like, you'll see like the out of balance is like they're very skeptical, and they're just overly into the like logic of it again. Because 7 is that divine wisdom. When our aura is like at its full, we're connected to that universal flow, and that's when all that divine wisdom can come into. And so if you're not getting that divine wisdom and trust, you're skeptical and you're not connected to the universal flow. So chanting really leads into the pranic body, so I want to go back to the pranic body before I go into the radiant body. So chanting is really good because we're thinking about we're vibrating ourselves. Okay, so the pranic body is like this system that the prana flows through. The prana is our life force, and it's more than just our breath. Otherwise Yogi Bhajan says we could strap an oxygen tank to the back and live forever. Right? So there's an essence to it. That's the life force. That when we run out of that, doesn't matter how much oxygen we have, that's it for this lifetime. And so our pranic body is when our masculine or feminine is balanced. Okay, so 8's a polarity number. So we'll see the energy cannot rise from the base of the spine if you're not balanced with your masculine and your feminine, right? If you're giving more than you're receiving, if you're strategizing more than you're in the flow, if you're more masculine versus the calming, cooling side of the feminine. If you're like that aggressive of the masculine versus the kind of finesse and subtlety of the feminine. So it's like anytime we're out of balance, the energy's not going to rise. So it's just paying attention to these polarities and bringing them into balance. Also, 8 is like the number for scarcity. Like all of those programs of scarcity and lack, it's like 8s are really good at saying, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough energy. Because the energy is the pranic body. So when we think of like the 8, it's this, they're all about it's not collecting, it's like, Eights are overly concerned with the accumulation of power and prana, which comes in the form of money, which comes in the form of all of these things. So, if you're out of balance with your 8, you're going to hoard money more versus being that philanthropic, kind-hearted, giving, altruistic kind of thing. 8's the number of the CEO because, if you're feminine, it's the girl boss, because it is that ability to have that kind of power, but it's also just that you have your energy. Think about the amount of hours a CEO has to work. It's like they have the energy to put into it. You're not going to see a person with not very much energy running a business. They don't have the energy, you know. So it's like 8 and having that access to that energy source, which that energy source again is that navel, it's that fire. So when we think about like breathing and like doing this, what we're actually doing is like stoking that fire with the breath and causing that energy source to like grow. And what I say is it's burning through, you know, these 72,000, you know, the nadis. It's burning through the nadis, burning out this like blockages so that the energy can flow freely, so that the kundalini can rise through from the base of the spine. So we have to like start, that's how the breath is so important. And then again, chanting, that living vibration is going to shake up that stuff again. So there's several ways we can get there. But pranayam, that's moving the energy is really great. So what else we see is like with 8s are like a lot of fear. Because think about it, if you're not taking deep breaths, you're just like shallowly breathing, your lungs are filling up with carbon dioxide. And your body's saying, I'm dying. And it's sending this like shot of adrenaline throughout. And then you're starting to feel that anxious and that fear and that anxiety. So this is so funny because like once that happens and we start to feel that adrenaline and we start to feel our heart racing and everything, we're like, oh wow, I'm feeling anxious. And then we pick something in our life that to be anxious about. Like that, like it's the egg before the chicken. Like we feel the feelings of anxiety and pick something to be anxious about, not the other way around. Does that make sense? We try to figure out, why am I feeling this way? It's because I'm nervous about this. And so the idea is actually we just really need to take a deeper breath, some deep breaths. And when we take those deep breaths, what we find is that the emotions are gone, but the thoughts are still there. So we can process whatever's going on clearly. And even more, we can use our breath to, like, we can train ourselves to breathe in those situations. Like, especially with the gong, I found with the gong when it gets really intense and loud and our heart starts to race and it's stimulating that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response. And what happens if we tell ourselves to breathe in that moment? And then the gong slows down, and then we go into that parasympathetic, relaxing mode. But what can happen is if we practice breathing in times of stress, that'll transfer to the autonomic nervous system, and then we'll automatically breathe every time that response happens of that anxious. So like my example is this one time I was in a Target, and all of a sudden I'm just walking down the aisle and I'm like, whoa, that was a deep breath. And I kind of scanned my field, like, why did I just take that deep breath? And I realized there's a baby crying a couple aisles down. And it had, like, my subconscious had heard the baby crying and started to, like, kind of raise my heart rate and give me that warning of the baby crying, because I'm a mom, way before I had consciously heard the baby crying, my body started working for me too. Like it started breathing for me because it's so used to that, whenever I have that heart rate up, whatever, that it's trained to breathe. So I want all of you guys, especially if you're in 8 as your mastery, like really start working with your breath. You can set a timer to go off every half an hour. And every half an hour, take a long, deep breath. Every time you hear that beep, mine goes off every hour. And every time I hear the beep, sometimes I don't hear it. Every time I hear the beep, I'm like, and what happens is you'll just find yourself randomly start breathing throughout the day, even if you don't have your timer going off. And just like consciously relating to your breath. So all of that fear, all that anxiety, with it, when it's an 8, it's a lot of fear of the future. It's a fear of the unknown. It's like, like, how am I going to pay for my retirement? It's like, how am I going to have enough money for this, And because 8s have those fears, they tend to stay in situations way longer than they should. So it's like a person will get a job. I see this all the time with an 8 mastery or an 8 soul. They'll, especially the 8 mastery, but they'll get a job at a very young age, and they'll just keep getting promoted, and all of a sudden, 15 years later, they're making a lot of money, they're really high up in the company, but they never expected to be with this company this long. It's not their passion, you know? Our prana is fueled by our passions. Our prana is stimulated when we're at the art gallery. It's stimulated when we're with our friends. It's stimulated when we're working on our passion projects. Have you ever gone all day without eating because you're working on something you loved? It's because you're being fueled by prana in that moment. You didn't need food. The prana was supporting you, that life force. And so don't do that all the time, but it's okay, you know, because like that's what it is. And so like if you're not feeling that, you know, like some people will get into this, but they'll stay because the question of the fear is like, well, how will I pay for this? Like they've created the life and the house and the bills that support, that match that lifestyle, and so they can't ever get out of it. They're stuck in their minds. We know better, right? We all have choices. We're autonomous, sovereign beings. We make our own decisions. There is no have-tos. We'll learn that in quantum languaging. You don't have to go to work. You choose to because of the consequences. But ultimately, anytime you say, I have to, you've like lost your power because that's not true. This is really good with the 8. It's like, I can't afford that. No, I can almost guarantee that you can afford $25 to come to the numerology workshop. But you're just choosing not to spend your money that way. And that's totally acceptable, but own it, right? Don't give your power away by saying you can't afford this or you don't have enough time, right? Because you're just choosing to spend your time not in that. And it's a choice, and you're sovereign beings, and we have that choice. The only other thing I really want to say about the 8, because I feel like it's something I don't mention a lot in workshops, and I'd really like to mention it in this one, is this idea of, you know, that polarity in that, you know, there's this guy, and he, his dad left when he was young. And so what he said was he was not going to be like his dad. He would never leave. He would, like, and he just, like, really had negative feelings towards his dad, okay? And, you know, when he grew up, you know, he got married and he did not leave. But he was never home. He was always working. And because he hadn't understood that his dad is a part of him and integrated that, he became that. Even if it didn't look the same way, you know? And so one of the things that you can do with an 8, if you have the 8s, is go through and make a list of all the people in your family and write down what you love about them and what you don't love about them, and realize all of those things are a part of you. And that's like your homework, you know, is to really own that so you're not pushing it away and then becoming it, right? In ways that you can't even imagine. So we're talking about the subtle body. We mentioned the subtle body, you know. I want to mention more about that, the subtle body being at the feet, because I think there's a really funny story that highlights that in that, like Nir Ver, who wrote The 10 Bodies of Consciousness, which is a really great book. You can order online. Actually, I feel like I've told so many people to order it online, they don't have it anymore. Like, I literally told hundreds of people to order this book online, so I think they need to print some more. But I do this thing called embodiment mastery training, and we go like one-on-one into all the 10 bodies in depth. And this one person just signed up. She was able to find a copy of this book online, so it's there. But in the book, he talks about how whenever Yogi Bhajan would go sit in a recliner, how he would like pretend to drop his pen or something underneath of him so that he could bend over and grab it, and then the subtle body energy at the feet would go into his crown. Do you see what I mean? So Yogi Bhajan's feet's like this, and he's like, oh, I dropped my pen. It's like soaking up all that knowledge from the base of his feet. Does this make sense? That subtle body, past life knowledge. This is, I think, why we kiss people's feet too. It's like a sign of respect, but it's also like getting their wisdom and their knowledge, right? So, I want to say, the subtle body versus the soul body. When you're out of balance with the subtle body, you tend to kind of get your information from outside of you. Because the soul's really getting it from within, right? It's just like you're feeling it, you know what the answer is. But we'll see some people, especially if they're out of balance, they're like, like this feather, and then I saw this bird, and then I had this tarot card, and then like the numbers of the gas added up to this. And like that's how they'll determine things, which is fine, except for when we're overly subtle. We're too subtle, right? Like I had a woman who came up with this name for her business, which it was like divinely inspired name. Like she came up with this name and she like loved it. But when she did the numbers for it, it added up to a number that she didn't consider to be a good number. So then she changed the name of her business. So that the number. So to me, that's like, no. Like, even as a numerologist, I don't even play that way. Like I pay attention to numbers as they relate to the bodies. I'm not adding up my address. I'm not adding up my numbers at the gas tank. I'm not adding up my ticket sale, like my totals. That's too subtle, in my opinion. And honestly, that's just my opinion, guys. But you know what I mean? I feel like when we're overly reliant on the outside and the external to give us the messages, we're not getting them from within, right? Now, there is to say, like, whatever you're reading out there is coming from within because you're interpreting it that way. But some people are like, oh, I saw this feather, and they'll go look up what the feather meant, and, like, that's how, but, basically, balance. Always and, never or. Don't do one or the other, you do both, okay? But just notice when you're getting overly reliant on the external, okay? So the radiant body. So the aura is our electromagnetic field, and what I say is the radiant body is that magnetic portion of our electromagnetic field. So it's what makes us very attractive and magnetic, and it's what makes our radiant, things come to us, And so all of the bodies are really how we're processing information, but the radiant body is like what we're projecting out. Does that make sense? So like what we're feeling in the aura, the thoughts, all of this is like how we're taking in information, but the radiant body is sending it out. So the radiant body is the number of the queen, okay? It's the number of the queen, the warrior. So like the queen, when you have a 10 in a challenge position, there's like some self-worth stuff. Because the idea is that when you're radiant, people just want to give stuff to you. And if you're a 10 out of balance, you'll feel bad. You're like, oh, no, I don't, like, you'll like shun their gifts, right? Or like, you're like, oh, no, let me pay for that. And they're like, no, I want to pay for that, let me pay for you. And you'll just like, won't let them. And this isn't like the normal, like, oh, no, you don't have to do that. I'm talking about like, they legit won't let them. They won't accept the gifts that the universe is trying to give them. So when we have a really strong radiant body, the queen, we're not like going to shun anything, right? But why? Why would, like I don't want to just say, hey, just accept everything. It's because we understand as a queen or a king that anything we get, we can use to serve our people better, right? So when we're out of balance, the queen's like, where's our breakfast? But when we're in balance, we're like, how can I serve my subjects, right? And then like we'll see just like a lot of time with 10s, they're just like, just not owning their queen status. And like they're letting people not treat them like a queen or a king. Think of the, this like coat rack, and it had like the aura, and it had the pranic body, it had all these hats, or like a hat rack. And I'd be like, okay, I need some confidence so I can put on my auric body. I need some protection, so I'm gonna put on my negative mind hat. So like the embodiment is like, what body do I need in that moment? Okay, so it's the awareness of all the 10 bodies that you can be whatever body you need. But now let's think about it differently. Let's think about it as like a dashboard. Okay, you're like, oh, I need a little more subtle. I need a little less positive. I need a little more negative. And you're just kind of adjusting and getting into that right kind of. So the embodiment is to embody all of the 10 bodies and use them at your discretion. And it's powerful. And it takes the ability to be the observer. And when you're the 11, you're the lighthouse. You're, what they say is you're the Buddha Dharma, you're the Christ consciousness, you're universal, you're above all dogma. And when you're not the 11, you're the 2. Yeah, because 2s get stuck and it prevents them. 11 is the number for spiritual elevation, spiritual excellence. So again, if you're stuck in that abyss, you're not elevating. And so what often happens, especially if we have the 11s in challenge positions, is that there's like people in our life or things in our life or attachments in our life that are holding us back. And what we have to do is cut those strings so that we can spiritually elevate, so that we can go to that next. The mantra for the 11, when they go low, you go high. It's a good one for the 10 too, just remembering to be graceful in ungraceful situations. But 7 or that 11 is for that spiritual excellence, so in that lighthouse, that idea of the lighthouse, especially if you have 11 as a mastery number, you're going through lessons in all of the 10 bodies, not just one of them. How lucky for you, right? I had a person once write me a letter that told me all the things that they thought were wrong with me. And I was pretty butthurt for a while. My negative mind was pretty, what? I can't even believe this. Why are they doing it? But what I was able to really understand was it was a gift. How many people get a list of everything that's wrong with them that they can just go through and work through, right? Most of us have to come to those awarenesses on our own. So I just started to believe it as a gift, And it's like going through all of those lessons in each one of those things and really being able to elevate past all of those. So it's like, when we have these lessons, when we have these things happen, recognizing them as prosperity. Bhutta Karam is the 25th Pauri, and it says, like, the great giver keeps on giving, but the consumers grow weary of consuming. And he's saying, like, there is no good or bad, only thinking makes it so, but all of these things are like things that we've asked for. We want to grow, we want to elevate. Who wants to be done and just like go back and merge, right, with the infinite? Well, that's what happens when we're the 11. We master all these 10 bodies. That's what I believe will happen with Jesus. He mastered all the 10 bodies. He was the embodiment. He was that embodiment, right, of love, perfect love. And at that moment that he died and he forgave, he became that Christ consciousness at 11. And then he was done with his reincarnations. So it's like, so we say we want to be done too and merge back with the infinite, and then we get these lessons and we're complaining about them. It's like, no, the great giver keeps on giving, but we're getting weary of consuming. It's like, no, these are gifts. Prosperity sometimes doesn't look like prosperity. Sometimes it looks like loss. Sometimes it's that losing that job because not the right one, so that we can, get on the right path. So that 11, that lighthouse, sometimes that lighthouse exists on the waves, crashing or on the cliff. And we have to hold that projection. And then remember, we're the lighthouse, so we're shining our light. We're not a spotlight. We're not like, you need help, you need help, you need help. We're just shining the light, and all the right people are coming to us, and we don't have to question it. We're not looking for people. The right people are coming to us, the people that are ready to hear what we have. I'm just keeping that. So, does anyone have any questions? I'd love to answer any questions that you have before we close out. And yeah, yes.
What does it mean when numbers are repeating? Like, for my example, May 5th, 5-5.
Just make sure that you don't miss the message. That this is what you're supposed to work on. Double extra. And also a really good mantra for the 10, because 10s tend to be all or nothing. And so I want you guys to, I'm going to give you a bonus right here. Add your soul and your mastery up, and you'll get your overall challenge.
Is that the challenge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, 10s need to sweat. And actually Guru Jagat recently said 45 minutes of sweating a day for the radiant body. The radiant body represents that, so dancing, 10s, dancing. Think about how that's spreading your aura in all those different ways, and how much dancing can make you sweat, But 10s tend to be, I was saying something, I said 10s tend to be kind of all or nothing. So the mantra for the 10 is always and, never or. And this is really good because my son's a 10. He's a 10 soul. So you know how I told you when you're your soul as a kid, you're fully identifying with it, and then you forget it. So my kid, I'm like, do you want this or this? And he goes, both. Because he's a king. It's always and, never or, right? And also it's not black or white, it's both. It's both. Always and, never or. So remember that when you start, because 10s, they can be kind of, So also if you have double numbers, here's a really good example that I see a lot. You have a knowledge of the 3, and then you have a mastery of the 3. So you have a 3 in the positive side, but you also have it on the negative. What's that even? To me, that means, hey, you figured out in previous lifetimes how to see the best in people. And now what you're working on in this lifetime is boundaries. You know how to see the best in people, but can you now have those clear boundaries? Any other questions? I love questions, by the way. They're my favorite. So if you have one, please ask it. Yay!
Is there a subtle difference between the mastery and the path?
Yeah, the mastery is your homework, and I would definitely say what you'll notice is that once you start doing your homework, you'll start getting on your path. Does that make sense? You got to connect your soul, you got to do your homework, and then you'll find your path. You'll be on your path. Yeah, once you start doing your homework, 100%. Because so for me, my homework is my aura. I told you, I have to constantly talk myself into, I get to, talk myself into having confidence and stuff. But the more that I step into that confidence, I start living my path of being the lighthouse, because my path is the 11. So I have to have that confidence and the fearlessness of the 1, and that 1 of the leader. And then once I can work on my aura and be the leader, then I start living my path. And that's just how it works for me. And yes?
So if my path is 10, and I make it also a 1?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because remember the 0. So that even for the 10 is like the 1 extra. You know, so it's not just the leader, it's the king, it's the queen. You know, it's like that extra. You know. I do want to say one thing that I missed about the arc line, and it's just that, you know, when you're out of balance in your arc line, you tend to be very judgy. You know, and I mentioned that when the arc line is out of balance, it represents self, like, you know, we'll experience some self-doubt, you know? And what happens is that arc line, it's like, sometimes it's like an antenna that's coming from the third eye, you know? And it starts weighing things as right, wrong, fair, unfair, black, white. And so, again, remember how I said that 6 is the number for social awareness? So activism comes from the 6, right? Because they're like, right, wrong, fair, unfair, black, white. We need those people. You know, we need those people to highlight when everything is out of balance. But what happens is we get into that, like, anger, you know? And then we get into the injustice, and we start saying things like, that's not fair, you know? When you notice yourself saying that's not fair, your arc line is out of balance. Because what you're not recognizing is everything's happening just as it's supposed to. So this idea of fair, unfair, you know, is moot. Because everybody's learning exactly what they're supposed to be learning at any given time. So what happens is when our arc line is out of balance, women have an extra arc line from breast to breast. And I think that men, there's some energy there too, you know. But women have this extra, so like when our arc line is out of balance, when we're right, wrong, fair, unfair, when it's not aligned at center, it deactivates our arc line at our heart and we lose our compassion. So when we're in judgment, we're not in compassion. Does that make sense? So we gotta stay in that alignment, that scale, and then turn our compassion back on. Any last questions? Yeah.
The asset projection based number.
Yeah, those are like, so those other four, like, so this is the sheet that I give people that get readings from me, and I just wanted to give you these sheets to like help you like have that list of the 10 bodies and fill out your own personal numbers. And I like highly encourage you to like schedule a session with me if you'd like. I do sessions over the phone, and I'll be in New York for the next couple days as well. And then you can get all that information plus more, plus your heart and your balance number I'll share with you as well. And then if anyone is interested in learning more about the embodiment mastery training, which goes into each of these bodies in depth, and really you get homework for each body depending on what you're going on with. So everybody's course is kind of tailored just to them. You can go find out more info on my website, which is divinewellnessstl.com. It's like divinewellnessstl.com/embodiment is like, or you can just go click around, you know.
Divine Wellness
STL stands for St. Louis. Yes. Woo! That's where I'm from. I'm just like doing a little touring around the New England area after Sutton Fest. And I'm just really grateful to have gotten to be here with you guys this evening. And thank you all. And we're going to tune out. And then if you have any other questions, I'll be around. And like I said, if you are interested in doing a reading, personal or whatever, I also do relationship readings, which help you kind of understand why, you know, I've done it with mothers and daughters and with couples, and just helping everybody kind of understand, like, why did we pick to be in each other's lives, and what lessons can we be learning from each other, and really kind of get into that growth mindset where, you know, we're not the victims, we're the co-creators, and we are empowered by the people in our life and what we're learning, and never, you know, there's never a coincidence. You know, it's always purposeful and intentional and conscious. And we make it that way. So let's go ahead and tune out. Rubbing palms. May